Virtual reality is virtually here. Also, Rwanda is becoming an African tech hub, and wearable computing is here, but where are the apps? All that and more coming up next.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
It's Wednesday, March 19th, 2014, and this is Tech News Today. Tech News Today is brought to you by ShareFile. Enhance your workflow. Send files of almost any size easily and securely with ShareFile by Citrix. Try ShareFile today. For a free 30-day trial, go to sharefile.com, click the microphone, and enter TNT. And by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional website or online portfolio. For a free 2-week trial and 10% off, go to squarespace.com and use the offer code TNT. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Mike Elgin.
I'm Chad Johnson.
And Tech News Today explores the big stories of the day in conversation with some of the world's best journalists. And Jason Howell, who's normally with us, is off today. Our guest co-anchor today is Harry McCracken, editor-at-large for Time, who writes the Technologizer blog. Welcome, Harry.
Hey, Mike.
It's good to see you again. We had Harry on Monday, and so we want to get him on as often as possible because his observations are always incredibly insightful. Again, welcome.
Cool. Good to be here.
Before we get to the news this morning, we'd like to turn to Rwanda, of all places, where the country is preparing to celebrate the 20-year anniversary of the end of the Rwandan Civil War and genocide. It's an important subject, to be sure, but why are we talking about this on a technology show? The reason is that in the past few years, Rwanda has been engaged in a rapid buildup of technological infrastructure and technology education development. And with us to talk about the education part of this mostly is Jean Philbert Nsengimana, who is the Minister of Youth and ICT in Rwanda. Welcome to you.
Thank you, Mike.
Now, before we talk about education, can you tell us about some of the development of high-speed internet connectivity in Rwanda? I've read about it, and it's incredibly impressive.
Well, Mike, our story of getting connected, I think it's a 20-year-old story. Basically, we got our first internet connection late in 90s, and that was based on VSAT. Rwanda has been connected to the submarine fiber optics only over the last 4 years. That's the time we also built a national fiber optic network touching all the four corners of the country. But Mike, let me correct a little bit. Thank you for an introduction and reminding that Rwanda will be commemorating for the 20th time the genocide against the Tutsis. I think it's very important that the rest of the world understands that it was not a civil war. It was a genocide against the Tutsi, which is a group of Rwandans. That confusion tends to be used a little bit by people who deny genocide, but some people just use it because they don't know how to properly qualify it, and I just wanted to make sure that it goes properly well recorded.
Well, I appreciate that clarification, and I would like to ask the Tech News Today audience who's involved in the Wikipedia to go correct that on the Wikipedia, because that's what it says. So let's get that corrected there. So so now, before we get into the internet connectivity, I read a statistic recently that said that Rwanda has moved from, at some point, 2% penetration of phone service to 59% in a very short amount of time. How long did this transformation take exactly?
The last time we had 2% phone users was, I think, 2006. Today, we stand at about 65%. And it has been incredible growth. That is about 30 times bigger. Now, what happened is a series of measures. One is liberalizing the sector, making Rwanda one of the best places to do business in the world and in Africa especially, and being able to attract foreign direct investments in the telecommunications sector. But at the same time, raising incomes of people so that they can afford telecommunication services.
Now, you make heavy use of Google Plus Hangouts in the technology, just jumping right into the nuts and bolts of the educational programs that you oversee. How is it you're using Google Plus Hangouts for education?
Well, actually, it's not really education as such. Our ministry is in charge of youth and ICT. On the youth side, we really focus on promoting entrepreneurship and helping young people making livelihoods for themselves. So we use this Google Hangouts technology to really bring young people in contact with support services, resources, mentors, and so that they can really be able to translate their innovative spirits into solutions and enterprises.
Now, by the way, we mentioned the infrastructure and the fast internet in Rwanda. Anybody watching the video can see that the Skype connection here is flawless, and so it's really a great connection, which is an example of how good the infrastructure is there. Now, just one more thing about the infrastructure that I should have asked you about. Now, you've built up the LTE and the fiber optics, but you still have the next phase in this is the last mile, as they say, connecting individual homes and businesses. Is that correct? And who are you working with on that? I understand you're working with a Korean company?
Yes. Over the last few months, we've been working with Korea Telecom. Now, the first mile or the first part is the backhaul links that we've built, as I said before, reaching every part of the country. But for the last mile, which is really to connect homes and businesses and offices, that's where we have gone wireless. Because of the way Rwanda is inhabited, it would have been really difficult to reach a critical mass of users if we relied to connect homes by the fixed infrastructure, for which we didn't have a pre-existing install, unlike many countries in developed economies. So the 4G LTE technology is the latest worldwide, and we've entered into this partnership to be able to extend 95% coverage to all Rwandans by 95% population coverage by 2017.
Now, all these initiatives we've been talking about, the infrastructure development and the education part of it, and training and so on, these are tightly integrated with the country's goals for the economy, if you can speak to that. And also, it's made vast improvements in miscellaneous things like emergency services, hasn't it?
Absolutely. I think one thing that many people don't remember is that it has been proven that an increase of 10% broadband penetration in any country will lead roughly to 1.3% GDP growth. So this penetration of technologies really lead to economic development. And what we've been able to do here in Rwanda is to associate growth with job creation, also with poverty reduction. Over the last 5 years, Rwanda has been able to pull 1 million people below the poverty line, and that's roughly 10% of the population moving from poverty, extreme poverty to the middle class. So it's really beyond education. It touches key important sectors. It touches agriculture transformation. It touches the way government delivers services. It touches the businesses, especially the small and medium businesses. It goes really very deep into financial services, because we've seen that financial inclusion, for instance, is one of the factors that has allowed our economy to grow. And these mobile technologies especially have played a big role.
Well, it's clear that Rwanda is quickly becoming a technology hub of Africa, and it's just astonishing to see what the country has accomplished in a very short amount of time. I want to thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much. Maybe the last comment I would like to make is all this happens because of many things. One of the most important, I think, is leadership. We've got His Excellency the President Paul Kagame, who's been really a leader in this space, not only providing vision, but also providing the encouragement and the support that and investments that we need to really move this sector forward. And thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you. You can read more about this on the website in this part of the ministry. You can find that at myict.gov.rw, and you can find Mr. Nsengimana on Twitter at NsengimanajP, and I'm going to spell that for you: NSENGIMANAJP. Well, in a sec, we're going to talk about virtual reality. Yeah, there's big virtual reality news today. But first, I want to tell you about reality. The reality is that if you are adding attachments to your email, those are easily compromised, lost, and they can be problematic in a wide variety of ways. And that's why I recommend our sponsor, one of our sponsors today, which is ShareFile. ShareFile is a vastly superior way to move documents around. You know you have to move them, contracts, spreadsheets, presentations, financial documents. Even if you need to share a username and password with somebody, the worst thing you can do is just type it into an email. The second worst thing you can do is put it into a document as an attachment to email. And the very best thing to do for moving any sort of document is to use ShareFile by Citrix. Why is it so great? Because instead of an attachment, you upload the document into the cloud in a very secure place, and then you send a secure link. And this gives you all kinds of benefits. For example, you can find out who has accessed the file, whether they download it. You can even get an alert. So you can basically send somebody a document, and then you can forget about it. In a week and a half, when they finally get around to opening it, you'll get an alert. You can contact them and have a conversation about that document at that point. You can even say, I only want this to be downloadable 1 time or 3 times. You have total control and total awareness about what happens to the documents you send people. Now, lots of people use ShareFile to move big files mostly. And of course, it can transfer enormous files. Many times I've sent I didn't even think it was that big of a file, but basically a document, a picture, even a video to somebody at some big company, and I get an error message that says, well, that's too big. Or sometimes I don't get an error message and they still block it because of the policies that they have in place at that company. Well, ShareFile gets past all of that because it's simply a regular email with a link in it. And then once they get that link, they can get the document. I mean, we're talking 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 gigabyte files, no problem on ShareFile, and also very secure. My wife started using it to interact with our accountant when we're working on our taxes, and then our accountant loved it so much he started using it. And it's really a good idea for anybody who handles large files, secure files, or any files. You never want to just add attachments to documents. Is a terrible idea. So sign up today, and the 30-day free trial has no obligation associated with it. Just go to sharefile.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and enter TNT. Remember, that's sharefile.com, and type in TNT, and you should try it right now. Well, Sony unveiled a prototype virtual reality system yesterday called Project Morpheus. That's right. Pick a pill, red or blue. It works with the PlayStation 4, of course, and Oculus, the company makes the Oculus Rift virtual reality headset, today announced that they're taking pre-orders for their second development kit. The Oculus Rift DK2 costs $350. And with us to talk about this today is Andrew Williams, who's the features editor for TrustedReviews.com. Welcome, Andrew.
Hi, Mike. How's it going?
It's going great. Well, Oculus Rift was announced 2 years ago and still hasn't shipped. How far away is this product?
Well, it still feels like there's a way to go, really, because Oculus has always said it won't really ship a product until it's ready for the market. And, well, we're getting closer to that with like a higher resolution screen and sort of better quality visuals all round. But I don't know, it still doesn't feel like we're going to see anything with the next few months. I mean, even Morpheus, like Sony's announced it, obviously, but when it's going to come to shelves is quite another issue.
Now, have they done anything about the nauseating qualities of the original version? They had a lot of sort of motion sickness problems with some of the users.
Yeah, they've actually changed the kind of screen they use in the Oculus Rift. Like, to start with, it was an LCD screen, the sort of screen you might get on a phone. But they've moved to an OLED type display, which you actually see that on some of the Galaxy phones these days. And that has a much faster response rate. And that means that basically you don't get that kind of blurring effect when you shift your head, and that's what really makes you want to spew up when you use one of these headsets.
Sure.
But the odd thing is actually that the Morpheus, well, the prototype they've announced is actually using an LCD screen, so we're not sure whether that's going to have the same sort of issues as the earlier Rifts.
So what are some of the big, and you wrote a comparison today on TrustedReviews.com, what are some of the big differences between these two headsets as far as we know so far?
Well, some of the underlying tech's pretty similar, really. I mean, you have like a screen that's split in two and half of it goes to each eye. And they use similar sorts of sensors, really. But I mean, one of the big things you'll notice right off the bat is that whereas the Sony one looks like a Sony product that you might see on shelves, the Oculus Rift looks much more like a sort of labor of love. It's kind of a science project, if you like. But technologically, they're pretty similar. They've got like a gyroscope and an accelerometer to judge where you are. And they use a camera that you might put, say, above your TV screen, and that looks for little signs, little triggers on the actual headset itself, so that it can track you if you move about in a room. So on the Morpheus, it's some lights like you see on the PlayStation Move controller. But with the Oculus Rift, it's actually these little dots that the camera tries to pick up on.
I see. And the Oculus Rift folks said, I think today, that all of the hardware and all of the features in this device will not be actually shipping in the ultimate shipping device. That's still in a highly prototypical version. How are developers going to work with something like that, knowing that everything's going to change?
Well, what the developers really need to work with is the basics, I think, like how to use gyroscopes in games, how to make that kind of control, like basically using your head to control a game, actually work. Because the things that are going to improve are things like the display resolution, the quality of the display, and the sort of fidelity of the components. I don't think it's going to be the basics, really, that are going to have to change all that much. What they need to do is really get things to the kind of level where your average Joe will put it on and be like, yeah, this is actually as good as or better than my TV. Because at the moment, the sort of sharpness you'll get from these sort of displays is actually a bit lower than your TV, because it needs to split the display down the middle in order to get that 3D effect. Because, you know, the pictures it sends to one eye are slightly different from the other eye, which is obviously how you get that 3D.
I see. Well, Andrew, I want to thank you for coming on and telling us about these two new developments in virtual reality gaming, and hope they ship these things sooner rather than later, because I really want to try them.
Thanks, Mike. Cheers.
You can find Andrew at trustedreviews.com and also on Twitter at www.andrew. No, I'm serious. It's the letters www.dot Andrew. That's his Twitter handle. Well, General Electric is jumping deeper into home automation with a new smartphone-controlled air conditioner called the Aeros. Very cool product. It's costs about $300 to $350, something like that. And it has what is essentially a Nest-like smart thermostat built right in. With us to talk about this is Chris Velasco, the associate editor for Engadget. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Now, this project was designed in coordination with Quirky. We know what GE is. Can you explain what Quirky is and what they do?
Sure. So if you haven't heard of it, Quirky is a New York-based sort of invention-centric startup. So what they'll do is they'll have users submit ideas for things they think should exist in the world. Other users vote on them, and if it gets enough votes, they eventually try to make it a real product. So with the Aeros, it was the brainchild of a former Department of Energy employee named Garth and Leslie, and Quirky and GE fell in love with the idea.
Now, this thing is, I said that it's similar to the Nest thermostat. In what way is it similar exactly?
Sure. So the Aeros, what's really cool about it is, in addition to cooling down the room, which is, I think, one of the best things about it, it also builds a smart schedule, or so they call it. So it'll figure out when you're using your air conditioner the most to kind of give you a schedule of when you should be using it. And it'll also keep tabs on local energy prices. So it'll make suggestions as to when you should be using it to save money.
Now, I think I read in researching this that you can say, okay, give me $50 worth of air conditioning and no more. Is that the case? Can you actually do that?
Yeah, so through the companion app, it's called Wink, that Quirky has made, you're able to set limits as well. So exactly as you said, if you only want to spend X amount of dollars on your air conditioning this week or this month, you can pop that into the application and your air conditioner will obey it.
Now, Wink, of course, is GE's sort of home automation app, and it works with other devices, but I understand that this also works with home controllers like SmartThings. They're trying to be very open about this, which we encourage. When will this be available, or at least when can people pre-order this product?
So the Aeros is available for pre-order now. You can pre-order from the Quirky website and from Amazon. And you can expect to see an actual retail release in stores like Best Buy, Home Depot, the usual suspects, in late April, early May.
Okay, well, wonderful. Well, I want to thank you, Chris, for coming on Tech News Today and telling us about this this new development in home automation.
Great, thank you.
All right, you can find Chris at Engadget.com, of course, and on Twitter at Chris Velasco. That's Velazco. Well, on yesterday's show, we talked about Google's new Android Wear initiative and also about the watches announced by LG and Motorola that support it. The one by Motorola is really awesome, by the way. I definitely want that one. We also talked about the need for apps and the lack of apps that are out there. Today, BI Intelligence published a study on the state of the wearable app ecosystem, past, present, and future. Tony DeNova is a research analyst for BI Intelligence and joins us today to talk about the report. Welcome, Tony.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Now, dozens of major companies and possibly hundreds of minor ones have announced wearable computing devices in the past year. But where are the apps?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's been a lot of new device launches, and I think demand for wearables by consumers is there, but what's going to make them worth wearing is the apps, and we've sort of found that the app ecosystems in their current state are a bit messy. A lot of these devices launch with exclusive platforms, limited device compatibility, things like that. So right now it might not be in the best state. Also, however, obviously Android Wear came out yesterday, changed the game, so to speak. But yeah, so we wanted to take a look at what's been going on, what have been some successes and some failures, and what can be expected in the future as far as wearable apps are concerned.
Now, Harry, you always take a very large view, a big picture view, and you also get into the details as well of consumer electronics technology. And I worry about the wearables computing market. I mean, we've seen so much, even within the Android space, people sometimes complain about forking and those kinds of issues. There's a Jean-Louis Gasset, who's a former Apple executive, talks about something called the basket of remotes problem, where if we can't even get, a television, remote controls coordinating with each other to figure out a way for consumers to easily use the features that are available, how are we going to do things like the Internet of Things, like wearable computing, which are very closely related to the Internet of Things? Are you optimistic about the ability of the sort of wearable space to get it together and have some kind of rational app ecosystem that's going to benefit consumers?
Long term, I am. I think we will get to a place that's cool, but we're still kind of in the prehistory of this whole category. And I noticed the other day with smartphones, I reviewed the first smartphone, which was the IBM Simon, which came out in 1994. And it was, another decade until you even got to the point where stuff like BlackBerry and Trio were pretty good, and even beyond that until you got app stores. So it wouldn't surprise me if it takes quite a while. I think stuff like Google bringing Android into the space is really important, because right now you've got your Galaxy Gear smartphone apps, you've got your Pebble smartphone apps, you've got your Sony smartwatch apps. I don't see that being a scenario that can go on forever. I think the industry has to settle on a few platforms before it really starts to take off.
And I don't really have a clear sense of what those platforms are going to be. I mean, obviously we talk a lot about smartwatches. That's a kind of a no-brainer. Smart glasses with Google Glass, there's a dozen or two potential competitors to that emerging here, there, and everywhere. Sundar Pichai, who's at Google, recently mentioned a smart jacket. We're going to see smart clothing. Flexible electronics are going to enable all kinds of things, and these won't even have screens. So that and we saw the Motorola 360, the Moto 360 has a round screen. So the form factors are going to be very unusual, very challenging for developers. Now, Tony, how is this development going to take place when you have such radically divergent form factors? Are you going to be able to get a platform? I mean, personally, I think that one of the things that drives the app ecosystem on smartphones, which Harry alluded to as being a successful model that emerged from a very limited model, is Apple, which has, at any given point, they have one or two smartphones, and they have these massive economies of scale, and then app developers, can build on that platform and also on Android. It's really, there's not, when you compare the range of form factors between smartphones and wearables, it's night and day. Wearables are going to be all over the map. So how is this going to happen in the future for app developers?
Well, for app developers, obviously, they're going to have to focus on which devices are the most popular, and we forecast that the wrist is going to win out. Already, some smart fitness bands like the Fitbits and Nike Fuel bands have been resonating with consumers, and but those are pretty incomplete devices. They only offer one service. They connect to your smartphone app via an API. But as this market grows and more apps become available, more robust app ecosystems are built, more complex devices like smartwatches will continue to win out. And we estimate actually that wristwear will account for 70% of the market by 2018, all smartwatches and fitness bands altogether.
Now, Harry, there's a big controversy in the among technology fans about smart glasses, especially around Google Glass, on whether consumers will ever really accept it. And smart glasses as a category are all over the maps. There are smart glasses that actually cover your vision completely, as opposed to Google Glass, which is sort of up and to the right of your vision. There are smart glasses that don't even have cameras. Do you really think that, I mean, clearly smartwatches have a very strong chance of being a widespread consumer phenomenon, but do you think that smart glasses will ever become a mainstream phenomenon?
I think they could, but there are even more fundamental technological problems that have not been solved there. I mean, Google Glass, in theory, is something that you wear all day long, but it only has 3 hours of battery life now, and you can't just keep putting a bigger battery on something you wear on your face. So it sort of requires breakthroughs in battery technology, I think, before it's something that can really be mainstream. And the nice thing about smartwatches is, while those are also still really early on, there aren't so many basic technological factors which we're assuming that we'll solve in the future.
Yeah. I mean, even within the smartwatch category, it seems like a pretty straightforward category, but in fact, there are probably three basic categories, Tony, and I think you would agree with this. There's the sort of the traditional smartwatch, if there is a tradition in smartwatches, of the big, bulky, square, complex, sort of mini phone almost, that has lots of, has a screen and touch screen and all that kind of stuff. And then there's another category that is almost like a bracelet. Samsung, for example, has two of one and one of the other, and that's kind of their fitness band. And so that's a very different category because the screens are very different, the functionality is very different. And then the third category is something that is lashed to your wrist but can be removed from the wrist and become a pin or something you attach to your clothes or put in your shoe or whatever. And so that's more of a all-purpose wearable computer that can also be a watch. Now, is the development of these, especially the difference between the bracelet and the watch, going to be completely different? I mean, those bracelets don't seem like they have a lot of compute power in them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I was alluding to before, as this market grows, we think those category lines will blur towards the smartwatch, more complex wristband with a fully functional screen and fully stocked app ecosystem. I think as far as apps go, fitness and health are what's leading the way right now. But I think there's a lot of demand for, notifications and personalized information being served up to people. And the wrist makes for an easy way to get that information and that content delivered to you directly. And so you need the fully functioning screen and the robust app ecosystem in order to do so.
Well, Tony, I want to thank you for coming on Tech News Today and talking about this report. I look forward to reading it.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
You can find Tony's report at intelligence.businessinsider.com, and you can find Tony himself on Twitter at Tony DeNova. Well, we have yet another story about wearable technology, but first I want to tell you about Squarespace. Squarespace is a website that helps you build a website. You simply go there, sign in, choose an incredible design from among their 25 beautiful templates, and then you can tweak and modify it, customize it in any way you like. You can really customize it if you can code, and if you can't code, don't worry about it. There's lots of customization options to have exactly the kind of website you want. If you want to sell something online, if you have a small business or you want to receive donations or raise money for your nonprofit organization, they also support e-commerce. Every single plan level supports e-commerce, and that's a fantastic thing. You can also create a logo for your company, which you can trademark using their logo creator tool. You can check that out at blog.squarespace.com. There's a really cool video that explains how it looks and how it works. Squarespace is inexpensive. It starts at just $8 a month, and that includes a free domain name if you sign up for a year. And of course, it's mobile ready. It's very famous for being mobile ready. You build a website, looks great on a big computer, on a big screen, but then when you look at it on a phone, guess what? It still looks fantastic because they recreate the site for the device. So everything is native to the specific device that people are using, and that is a very, very good thing that will make you look fantastic. And of course, their legendary hosting is included and you basically can't bring down a Squarespace website because they have so much processing power behind it. So start a free 2-week trial with no credit card required and start building your website. When you decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure you use the offer code TNT, and that'll get you 10% off and also show your support for Tech News Today. We thank Squarespace for their support of Tech News Today, and remember that a better web awaits, and it starts with your new Squarespace website. Well, we told you yesterday about Google's new Android Wear program and mentioned a few of the companies that Google says will ship Android smartwatches this year. Samsung was one of them, of course, and Android Wear smartwatches connect smartphones via Bluetooth. So in other words, it's kind of a peripheral device to your phone. But now a report coming out of Korea says Samsung is working on a smartwatch that doesn't need a smartphone. It takes the SIM card directly into the watch. Essentially, it's a watch phone. And this report says Samsung plans to release the product first in Korea through SK Telecom, which is the country's biggest carrier. This is interesting and not interesting, Harry, in the sense that, it's interesting that Samsung would create a wearable device that wouldn't require you to buy a Samsung phone. Of course, all of Samsung's wearable wristwatch devices require specifically a Samsung phone. So this would eliminate the need for a phone or to carry a phone. But it's also interesting because really this category's been around a while, right? Haven't there been small Chinese companies making smartphone watches for like a decade or something like that?
Yeah, I want to say maybe Casio and maybe LG have done them in the past. So it is an idea that's been around for a long time. And that's, technologically, it's not that huge a deal to do. It is a huge deal, though, to do it well, and which is part of why we sort of right now are in this intermediary situation where smartwatches are usually peripherals to smartphones.
Yeah, and you said it's difficult to do it well. I don't think anybody has, and certainly they haven't done it in such a way that has captured the imagination of the public. I've never even seen one in the wild. I've seen prototypes and I've tried them out, but they don't even seem to catch on in China. So I think that Samsung is probably, sometimes their strategy seems to be just like throw it against a wall and see if it sticks. And in this case, I have the feeling that it probably won't. I think the combination of a Bluetooth connection to a regular smartphone is probably a winning combination. It enables the device itself to be as small as possible, and it also gives you, great internet connectivity and so on. I really don't think anybody's figured out a good way to let you talk. I mean, there's that one where you hold it up to there's like a glove and the microphone's in the pinky and you talk like this. There's another one with a string that came out of Japan that goes up. Those are goofy, and they're not going to be mainstream devices.
And battery life, again, is a big issue.
That's right.
I mean, with Bluetooth LE, you can do a smartwatch with sort of at least semi-adequate battery life. But I think once you put a cellular connection into the watch itself, it's hard to see it going even for a full day, most likely at this point. But, someday there will be a good one probably, and we won't get there unless companies like Samsung experiment. So I don't poo-poo the idea of them working on it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, first Alicia Keys, then Ellen DeGeneres, and now Joe Belfiore. Just as the singer and comedian were caught using iPhones when they were pretending to love BlackBerries or Samsung as paid spokespersons, Microsoft's head of Windows Phone, Joe Belfiore, was caught tweeting pictures from an iPhone. He quickly pointed out in a subsequent tweet, quote, "Yes, it's an iPhone today, trying out iOS 7.1, no need to alert the media," unquote. Well, too late, Joe. The media has been alerted. Harry, I believe him. I don't think he's a secret iPhone lover. I think he really was just trying out iOS 7.1. What do you think?
Well, if you've ever met Joe, I don't think you would question his passion about Windows Phone. And I've met some folks in the tech industry who don't seem to be terribly familiar with their competitors' products or who refuse to mention their competitors by name. I think it's really healthy if you're running a platform to be really familiar with the other guys, and so good for him.
Yeah, I have met Joe, and he does strike me as a very honest and straightforward person. And of course, they all do it. I guarantee you. Even Apple, which pretends that they don't go to their competitors' events and check out their products in advance, I guarantee you they do. They all do, and they should do, because that's really obviously a very, very smart thing to do, to know your competitor very well. Well, in other news, smartphone cases that do jobs unrelated to the phone itself can be great. For example, one product has built-in tools like a Swiss Army knife. Another smartphone case has a built-in beer bottle opener. That's going to be handy. But a new product aimed at fitness fans is literally the worst smartphone case ever conceived. It's called the Tone Phone, and it's marketed as, quote, the world's heaviest iPhone case. One version weighs 2.2 pounds and another weighs 3.3 pounds. It enables you to use your iPhone as a dumbbell for working out. You can pre-order the Tone Phone, and it ships in April, maybe April 1st. I know they're taking money for this, Harry. It looks like a joke to me, but they seem to be actually taking pre-orders for this, and this website appears to be a legitimate site. Is this the dumbest thing you've ever seen in an iPhone case, or have you seen anything dumber?
Well, years ago when I used to go to Macworld Expo, and it started to be overtaken by, at the time, iPod case companies, I kind of thought that cases for Apple products were a fad. Okay, I was totally wrong. It's kind of astonishing to me how many of them there are, and how many types there are, and I don't, there's no case so strange or so peculiar that I can't imagine a company trying to do it at this point.
In other words, you can't be shocked anymore. There's so many bad cases out there that you're pretty much jaded about the whole category. Is that what you're saying?
I've grown pretty darn jaded about it. We'll see if these guys show up at Macworld Expo, which is coming up shortly.
Well, I like to work out both my arms at the same time, so I'm going to need another iPhone. Anyway, I want to thank you, Harry, for coming on today. Appreciate your insights as always, and again, I hope to have you on again very soon.
It's always fun, Mike.
All right, thanks, Harry. Well, you can subscribe to Tech News Today, and I certainly encourage you to do so by going to twit.tv/TNT. You can subscribe to either the audio version or the video version or both. Also, we want to hear from you. Send us an email at tnt@twit.tv or leave us a voicemail by calling 260-TNT-SHOW. Also, don't miss our evening newscast, Tech News, tonight at 4 p.m. every weeknight, and that's Pacific time. My name is Mike Elgin, and I thank you for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.